A new poll suggests the Ontario PCs are still in good shape heading into the summer, but the dynamics could certainly shift if an early election is called in this province. Joining us live now is David Valentin, principal at Liaison Strategies. Good to sit down with you again, David. Nice to see you. So as rumors swirl about a potential early election, you actually kind of took a closer look at what would happen if that were the case. What did you find?
Well, right now what we see is an 11-point lead for the PC party. It's a very strong lead. Most of the regionals are looking pretty good. But if an early election were called, we told Ontarians a couple of quick things about that. One, that the next election is supposed to be in 2026. Two, that this would be the government cutting its mandate a little short by about a year. And then we asked them, how would that impact your vote? Who would you vote for? And what we saw was that lead of 11 points gets a lot smaller. It's only a 5-point lead. That's very narrow, and we actually saw some good fortunes for the PCs in the regional parts of the province turn into losses. So it would be a much tighter race.
Interesting. And so where would things land for the opposition parties based on these results?
Well, there's something I should point out, which is that when we do this polling, we really can't present what the government's rationale for the early election would be, and we can't point out what the opposition party's reactions are going to be just yet. But where we see some opportunity for the NDP is in Hamilton and Niagara. We saw, today would be a 3-point lead for the PCs in Hamilton and Niagara. If they called an early election, it's about a 6-point lead for the NDP. So they do a lot better. They could pick up some seats. For the Liberals, there's good news in Northern Ontario and also in Toronto. They take a 3-point lead in Toronto and turn it from that into a 10-point lead. That would see a lot of PC incumbents have a very challenging time in the city. And ultimately, in Northern Ontario, the PCs would go from first place to third place. So a lot of movement as people have to consider, why is this election being held? Yeah,
you've just broken it down by the regions. I want to zoom out and take a look at the larger picture. Sure. If an early election were called, it would become a 5-point race.
That's right. It's from 11 points to 5 points.
That's significant.
That's a very tight race. And I think, given what we're seeing at the regional level, Doug Ford would be in line for something in the lines of a minority government. It wouldn't really be a majority territory anymore.
The PCs are obviously thinking about this. Yeah. That's what a lot of people at Queen's Park are saying. Were you surprised by these findings? Because I think the PCs were hoping for better results from this poll.
Yes and no. I mean, it all depends on how you want to poll it and what questions you want to put in front of people. I think, of course, some of us remember, not myself because I wasn't around back in 1990 as an adult to experience that election, but we certainly learned through the history books what happened when Premier David Peterson called an early election. People really did not like that. And back then in 1990, the opposition parties pointed out the cost of the early election. They brought up all the scandals of the day. And of course, they'll have that opportunity again if that early election is called.
Did you ask Ontarians the question, do you want an early election? How does the electorate feel about that?
We didn't choose to ask that. We chose to ask in a different way. Because I think if you ask people, do they want more elections? I think most people will say no.
Fair enough.
And what we wanted to study was what the actual impact on the voting intentions would be.
Okay. David Valentin, live in studio. So fascinating. Good to be with you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.